Right, so Colin, welcome. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Not bad, mate. Not bad at all. So, just if you don't mind, just a little introduction to who you are and what you do.
Started off playing like everybody else does. School, at home. We was lucky enough to have a shop, so we had a good yard out the back. So I'd be out in the garages playing out there, like everyone else. Got straight into it. Wanted to be a footballer, so you join your local grassroots team. Um, from there, I started up playing up front, and then I went into midfield, and I was lucky enough to be half decent at the time, long time ago now. And then I was lucky enough to be selected by West Ham and Orient. Identified back in the day, you didn't sign at 8 or 9 years old. First time you signed was when you was 14. Associate school book forms. So got invited to Chelmsford, where Orient was, and soon after being there with the legendary Mervyn Day, got sent up to Brisbane Road. So it was like a satellite centre. Same with West Ham. You could go to two clubs at the time. Um, was identified by a great scout called Len Herford. And then we went to Tilbury, invited to Tilbury Football Club. Within a week or two, skipped the Tilbury Football Club, going to Chadwell Heath, and there you are, training at West Ham at Chadwell Heath at training ground, or going up to Leighton Orient Brisbane Road and training down the road at Lowell Farm and pushing a minibus because it never worked. So that was my introduction to football. Saw the levels, saw the standards. You get to that age and stage where you think, yeah, I'm good, but these players are probably a lot better than me. I ended up signing for Leighton Orient at 14. So I'd done 2 years there. And then as you get older, you think, am I going to be a player? And like everybody else, that's your dream. Very different in them days with apprenticeships and scholarships. Soon realised I wasn't going to live the dream. And that was my playing career, if you like. I did play in non-league, but sort of dabbled because I was coaching, and soon realised, I could make a living out of coaching, and I wasn't going to make a living out of playing. So for me, I think I chose the right thing. Um, Saying that, ideally, looking back, everybody wants to be a footballer, but it was a great experience for me to pass on my knowledge as a coach, knowing that I'd been through the process about playing under pressure, signing, being around better boys, what goes on and the sacrifices you have to make to be a player. I've got no regrets in terms of how it panned out, and I accepted pretty early on I wasn't going to be a player. I was given advice to say, "Oh, you didn't make a player because you had an injury," and me being me, I'm too honest. I can't say that, And let's be honest, I was very small and light at the time, and it was a stage, an age of where the game was a lot more physical.
Yeah,
So you had to manage yourself, and yeah, that was my introduction to playing.
playing perfect. So, just going back to what is when you do you have a moment when you was a kid where you remember just getting hooked on football?
I don't think there was a specific time, but I remember I was introduced to football at a very early age. My dad played. My dad was had a business, and he would play football. And at the ages I can think back to being as young as 4 and 5 and being um, put in the car, come and watch dad play football, which I absolutely loved. I adore my dad because I suppose he was the one that introduced me to it. And because we had a shop, we had the land to play football within our own land. Originally, I'd come down from London, but we'd moved to Langdon. And for me, I was hooked straight away. I would watch it on the telly. My parents would buy me football kits from an early age. So for me, it was natural. Every day, whether I got up, it was playing with a balloon in the house, going out in the yard before school, dinner time, break times, playing football, coming home, getting changed straight into my football kit, out the back or down the park playing with the big boys. So there was no specific time. It was part of my life. I think it was who I was.
Yeah, no, brilliant. It's made me laugh there. You said the balloon. I literally have to throw them away all the time. My son's constantly little. He's be watching the telly. The balloon goes
And
backwards and forwards.
I mean, I can identify with that. And like you say, it was because I take the ball into the house. It was like, no, you can't play with the ball.
Yeah,
And the balls weren't like now. We can get them sponge balls. So it was a balloon. And you challenge yourself, and you'd keep the ball up or keep the balloon up. And if you can't keep the balloon up, then you've got a problem. But then you'd run into the furniture. But no, there was always a balloon, a ball, a tennis ball, or something to practice with. But great days.
So you're very honest there in terms of you knew that you could maybe not go as far in football as a player. Was there a particular moment that you remember, or a training session, or a scenario where you was like that switch in thought process?
It's funny you should say that. I was lucky enough, and at West Ham and at Orient, there was decent players. I played with decent players, but then you suddenly go in there, and there's names that have gone on to have good careers, and you look at them and you go, "Oh my God!" You know, the levels. There's levels and there's levels, and I think I always remember a particular training session, and it was Stevie Castle, and Steve was a player that went on play for Birmingham, and I still see him now, and he's heavily involved in the game. He was someone I looked up to, and I watched him develop. And you'd play in a session, he'd absolutely batter you, get out of the way. You know what I mean? And not only was he physical, but he was a player, and he had all the traits to go on and become a player. And then obviously as a coach, you see them traits in other people. But yeah, I looked, and you get to that moment where you go, where do I go from here? Am I going to get better? Is that physicality going to make me a better player? Technically, I was very, very good. And I was quick, and I had to be, but the quickness was more in my brain, because you didn't want to get caught in possession, because you knew that if you did, Stevie Castle, whoever you played against, would be battering you.
Yeah.
And you realise that when you played against other sides. But yeah, you suddenly get that acceptance of maybe I'm not good enough. And I've always been honest to say I wasn't good enough. But I was privileged enough to encounter some really good coaching at a young age, being at West Ham, being at Leighton Orient, with coaches that have influenced my career as a coach and influenced my values and morals as a person. So for me, it was nothing but great experience.
Right.
Spending a combined total of 7-8 years, seasons, and them clubs. I was fortunate enough to go. I went and had a trial at Coventry City as well. One of my mates was signed, and he did his scholarship apprenticeship up there. But to go round and not just be in the southeast, although it was very competitive, to go into a different area in the Midlands, and later on in life you go up north and you see things. But for me, nothing but fantastic memories of being a player.
Yeah. And so the mental shift going from player to coach, did it take a while to get your head around it?
Yeah, I think it does, and it's the rejection. So I can identify with a lot of the players that get rejected, and there wasn't in them days the welfare to help with your mental state. And I can remember I had to get a job, didn't know what to do, and I was lucky enough to get a job, and I was on Pitsea Station. I was going one way to Southend in a job that I absolutely hated, and my mate across the platform, who I'd see sometimes, Brian Horn, who when I'd be a goalkeeper, who was younger than me, was going that way to Millwall. So mentally, and I say it, I looked at them train tracks, and after 2 or 3 months, I was thinking, what have I got in life? From being a footballer, or someone that wanted to be a footballer, and being rejected and not being good enough, there comes an acceptance of where you go, can't do this. And it got to a stage, you looked at them train tracks, and believe it or not, it does enter your mind. Where am I going? What am I going to do? But I was lucky enough to have the support of my parents, who both support me in life today, which I'm lucky. And they said, look, why don't you do your coaching badges? Education, what are you going to do? Do you want to be a PE teacher? So that acceptance, but the transition to becoming a coach when I got involved was easy, because it's in an environment that I was comfortable in, working with younger players. But saying that, those players that I first worked with were not much younger than myself. So I had an identity with those, and I knew exactly what they was going through. So I had, a lot in common with them. And for me, I think it was beneficial for both me, for me to be in an environment that I wanted to be in, but also be able to offer those young players the things that maybe I didn't get, and give them some advice, both on the pitch and off the pitch. So, yeah, in terms of transitioning from player to coach, hard, but in another way, easy. It was the acceptance of not being good enough, and then realising maybe this is my vacation in life, to be a coach.
Yeah, because it's quite interesting you saying about like the parents, and you decided. What was that like with your mum and dad, in terms, because we live in an environment now where we've got far too many pushy parents that believe that their children are far better and should be playing at levels that realistically they're nowhere near, but they believe. How is that? Because that's slightly different. How did that come about? That conversation? How did the parents take it? Because I'm guessing they invested a lot of time, effort,
Yeah.
travel, taking you everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, from an early age, at like 12 years old, I was identified on Hackney Marshes, Mabley Green, as a youngster playing against Leighton Orient. So my parents, or my mum in particular, obviously dad worked, mum worked in the shop, but we would be taken twice a week to Chadwell Heath and go up to Orient twice a week. So it was a big commitment when you live in Leyden or Basildon area, and then in Pitsea Vange area, being transported, and parents took it in turns, and we got expenses. So the investment in time from my parents, but going back to my parents in terms of, what I didn't miss is when you had those games, there is a pressure. So I could see my parents coming back, and my dad was very hard on me. You gave the ball away 8 times, you could have done this, you could have done that. I mean, it was in my interest, but he didn't faff. A lot of the parents now will blame others. So I come from a family that the values and ethics were, first and foremost, you looked at yourself. So I would beat myself up, but my dad would know when I was down, and he would also be able to lift me. Mums are more, if you like, able to do that. They're more empathetic about feelings, whereas your dad was very supportive. He would tell me just as it was. So, I'm very grateful for them, because it was them that allowed me then to pursue my dream of going into coaching, and supporting me financially initially, and emotionally, which you definitely need, because players now are supporting that. But the point that you raised round about, lots of parents, rightly or wrongly, have ideas above their station about the kids, and I encounter it all the time. And I think, looking back at the players, and you probably go on to this, there are sorts of different parents, but the boys that go on are very honest, and the parents are honest, and they can see that, where today, because of society and things have changed, it's always someone else's fault. But for me, I think honesty is the best policy. Hasn't always worked out for me, being honest, in some respects. But, for me, it's the values and ethics that you have. And if you've got them, like my parents always instilled in me, if you're honest, you can sleep at night. Whereas some people will say anything just to be popular, or it's not their fault. So, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, no, so I had with my son who's 9. I have a very mixed opinion, especially in my household, because I'm very much honesty is the best policy. Then someone said to me, every kid, it should be like Father Christmas. Every kid should believe that they're going to be a professional footballer. And I'm like, I get that, but like, you don't get nothing for unless you work hard. So you can't just, if you're showing signs, like if you're the perfect role model child that never really needed to be educated, and you had all them work ethics, then great. Okay, let them believe what they want. But I think if you've got to show them a path where they've got to work hard, if they want to get better, they need to get better. Like, I don't. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah,
Where I'm mixed.
I understand the parental
I get
view.
they're a kid.
I get that. I understand that, and we want the best for our kids. But I think you have to be honest, and the longer you let that go on, the more disappointment they get when they see it. And I think, in terms of psychology and study, kids at 7 and 8, 9 don't know who the best players are. By the time they get to 10, 11, 12, they start to realise there's a pecking order. And sometimes they believe it and they know it, but the parents can't see it. And that's why I think sometimes kids give it up, because they're living dad's dream. So for me, it's twofold. Yeah, you want the best and you want them to believe, but there has to be a time where reality kicks in. And I think the kids recognise that more than the parents. However, that can be transferred that, it's everybody else's fault and it's not mine. So I think it's a difficult one. And as long as parents are supportive of their child, whether it's a female footballer or a male footballer, then it's nice to have a dream, but realism has to take part. And I'll tell you why as well. It was, for me, I was quite bright at school, believe it or not, in some subjects. If I didn't like it, then I wasn't interested. Many school reports, if he spent as much time working on the subject and writing the England team in the back of his book, then, he'd be a fantastic student. But going back to education, the most important thing is that you're educated, because it doesn't matter if you make a footballer. And I had friends that local to here that played in the first team, broke into the first team. With 18 months, 2 years, they had injuries, ACLs. And back in the day, we wasn't so advanced and their career had finished. Now, for me, if you've been a footballer, and I had two friends in particular, one of them played at Crystal Palace and one played at Leyton Orient, still good friends to this day. Can you imagine the disappointment of going in to the game? And I didn't experience that. I experienced the game and being around it, etc. But they have actually played in the EFL, as it would be now, or played in the equivalent to the Premier League. And all of a sudden you're going, where do you go from there? 19 years old, 20-year-old, finished, small payoff from the PFA. But at some stage you have to get back into education. So for me, some kids will neglect their education because their dream is to be a footballer. And I certainly did neglect my education to a certain degree, although I was quite academic. Again, I was very bright at maths and English and other subjects. I loved geography because it educated me around football. But my message to parents is support your kids, be realistic. And again, putting it back to education, you wouldn't want your child to be in a top set of maths or English and they was lagging behind.
Yeah.
And if they did that to a parent and put their child in that class and they were struggling, they would accept, well, we need to be in group 2 or group 3. But in footballing terms, they want to play at this level and that level and they're not capable, and it's the coach's fault. It's everybody else's fault. So, yeah, my advice to parents is just support your child, see where it takes them and back them all the way, but not neglect other sports and their education in particular.
Yeah, no, it's really important. So obviously you touched on it there. You do believe being a player, like you said, and that was easier to be a coach, or would you say it had its elements of a negative?
Playing's the easiest thing in the world. When I say that, and you learn this as a coach, you're the last one there, you're first one away. Everything's done for you. Even when I was a young player, food's provided, transport's provided, kit's provided. All you do is go there, but you don't realise that when you're younger. Suddenly, when you're not in that environment and you are a coach, you're the first one there, you're the last one away, and you spend your whole time thinking about it. I mean, don't get me wrong, when you're a player, you spend hours with a ball, although I don't appear to spend as much time with a ball now. So there's trade-offs. There's things that are similar in that you're devoting your time. And in other ways, there's things that you're a player you don't even think about as a coach. And I'm sure there's lots of players when their pro career's ending and all of a sudden the reality is, I'm going to go, do I become a pundit? Am I lucky enough to be a face to be a pundit? Or have I got to go in that world of coaching and management? And then I say the reality of going to get that education, just because you've been a player doesn't mean you're going to be a good coach. So for me, yeah, in terms of, it's a different world and one that's very, very different. And being a player, as you say to coaches, or coaches will say to players as they get older, play as long as you can, because you can't do it when you get older. Aches and pains last for longer, and it's the best thing in the world, playing. But the next best thing, without a doubt, is coaching and managing and even educating coaches. So that's in there as well.
Yeah. And what sort of things did you learn from that setup with Leyton Orient and West Ham? Did you get any little tips in that when you were more for when you was a player, but don't go too much into coaching just yet. So just more as a player, what did you learn being in them environments?
What you learn is, you think you're a good player and you are, and you put the hours in, and then you look at those players that are better than you and you go, well, if I've put in 5 hours a day, and we laugh at kids now, can you do 20 minutes a day? Because that's the time you'd put in before school. That commitment, and as you get older and you get into them next levels, it's not just about the effort, it's the sacrifices you're making. So there's lots of things you can't do. You can't go out, you can't do this, you can't eat that. I mean, I was lucky because I was a light thing. I could eat what I like. And, my advice that was given to me was eat everything that don't bite back. But in terms of, a little bit different now, but in terms of knowing and helping you on your journey as a coach, you're looking at the commitment, you're looking at the travel to and from, you're looking at the preparation, whether it be cleaning boots, because my parents made me clean my boots. My dad said, look, they started off cleaning them, my dad would show you. So all those little things about really wanting to be the best you can and being 100% committed. And people don't always see what a pro, or even those that don't make it, go through, and what they do, and the sacrifices they make in trying to be the best they can. You know, and I think those are the things that I took from playing football and seeing it's not just about the physical side, the technical side, the psychological side, the mental side of, and I say this today, kids, if, you know, what's the biggest thing that you could say to kids? It's the resilience. I think resilience is a massive thing in life generally, not just in football. When you get knocked down, you've got to get back up again, and you can't feel sorry for yourself. For me, all those mental qualities are as important, if not more important, because I've seen players with lesser ability go on, and I've played with players that had really good, fantastic ability, and you think, why didn't they quite get there? And it was a lack of resilience or mental strength or courage or belief.
Yeah, nice. Interesting to hear, mate. So, in terms of the coaching badges, talk me through the stages that you went through, obviously, to get to in terms of qualification wise.
Very interesting, because you'd played and you'd had all that experience, and you'd had, and I go back and I may be name dropping, but I'm going to say it anyway. When you're around West Ham, what West Ham do very well is all the young players they would make do the coaching badges. So Pat Holland, without a doubt, is my biggest inspiration in my coaching career. So we had people that would be coaching us, who were household names. In terms of the coaching, I lost my thread a bit. Just remind me, what was it?
So, like the process you went through.
So the process in
what
terms of coaching,
qualifications you went and
we
done.
was encouraged by Patsy as well, because I remember having a conversation. We said, I've done my full badge, which was the old equivalent to the A licence. It was the hardest 2 weeks of my life. So the process that you go through, I come out and I suddenly learned that I had lots of knowledge as an individual. I went on my prelim coaching badge years ago at the grand old age of 18, 19, with a guy that I remember. I remember all the people that, you know, who influenced me. Terry Mould, God rest his soul, was a great coach. And I did my coaching badge, and all of a sudden I'm on a coaching badge, and I think I know a lot because I've been coached at West Ham by this player, that player, these great coaches. And all of a sudden, you know your job, but you go on a coaching badge, and all of a sudden they talk about linking in. If I do this, what do you do? And I can remember doing a defending practice, a basic 3B3 over at Woodland School. And I didn't know if he was there where I need to be. So I'd attended this great club, the Academy of Football, West Ham. And when I look back, there wasn't too much attention to detail around defending. So all of a sudden you think, well, I want to be a coach. I need to know a lot. And all of a sudden, if he does that, you do that. And I'm like, I don't know anything. So I did that coaching badge, thought I'd sail through it. And if I'm honest, I got failed. And when I inquired to where I failed, I was told, and I have a lot of respect for the guy, well, you're only young, we know you're going to come back. And that put my back up with the FA from an early age, because I thought, that's not the way it should work. Surely if I'm good enough. But I think, in a way, again, and I talk about being rejected, I've been rejected in football. So to be rejected as a coach gave me that impotence to go, I want to go on, I want to know more. So when I went back, and I went on it, and I met another guy that's in the game, and I see him on the telly now, Mark Robson. So Mark Robson and I were on the same coaching badge at Gloucester Park, Basildon, and we both sailed through it. But having that gap in between gave me the time to get out on the grass and actually work with players. But it also made me resilient. And like I said, I wanted to prove that I was a better coach. And in those days, you were really grilled. So you wasn't just as it is today. And that's not criticism on today. It was back in the old days, you was on your playing ability. So you was assessed on your playing ability. Don't mean to say you had to be the best player to be a coach, but you was assessed on your playing ability. Laws of the game. There was a theory paper, and then obviously your practical coaching. So from there, back in the day, you went from the preliminary award to your full badge. There wasn't an intermediate course. There was a prep course. It was called a proprietary course. It prepared you for the full badge. Well, I was very lucky enough to be employed at Leyton Orient at the time. So when I'd come out of Leyton Orient, because of Pat Holland, he was the youth team coach at West Ham when he finished his career, I was invited back, so I'd worked there. So I was lucky enough to then meet Les Reid, who then became the technical director. So I've been very privileged in the people that I've worked with. So I had great coaches, but all of a sudden you're around someone who is a local. I think back in the day there was only 6 FA full-time staff that were in the various regions. So I was lucky enough to have Les Reid take me under his wing, because he had something to do with where we used to coach at Leyton Orient. He knew I wanted to do my coaching badges, and I can remember going to Crystal Palace with him, and him sort of having an eye to look over me, and me being around such great people. I was lucky enough to go on and be selected, because I was at Leyton Orient as well, taking teams, to go and do my full badge. So you jump from the old preliminary award straight to there. So you either got like an intermediate award, which I got, and then I had to go back and get the full badge back in the day. So for me, it was a natural progression. And I think being around football and being around football people and having them people mentor you was for me, I was so fortunate. And over the course of the time, I've lucky enough to work with John Cartwright at Charlton Athletic, who was also the technical director for England. And then I had experience with John McDermott, who's the current technical director. So over the course of my growing up as a young player and being around football people, I was lucky enough to watch great people work. But in terms of coach education, it was 2 weeks solid. It was solid. You know, you had to be real resilient physically, whereas the courses now have changed to make it, I wouldn't say easier in terms of being able to focus and having different blocks. But for me, if you want to be educated, then it's, for me, you must go and get your coaching awards.
Yeah.
It helps.
Yeah, which we'll get onto a little bit later, but I find it a bit frustrating. Like for me, I don't learn well when I'm doing 2 days over a course of 3 to 4 months. I'd prefer much to set aside a week, 10 days, whatever I've got to set aside, and go in a classroom and learn properly, because that's going to register. Like, I just think for me, it's obviously where I met you. It felt at times a little bit rushed. It's like I'm sort of learning, but I'm not learning. I'm just getting more of an idea of how to do it, not really how to do it. And the cost of these fucking courses now. Like, I was going off on a tangent here, mate, but I was over in Barcelona in Salou, and we played a local team. And I was just talking, because the coach in a very bitty English was talking to me about grades and all different things about coaching in England. And I said to him, "Oh, like, what badges do you hold here?" And he's like, "Oh, minimum pro license. Everyone if you're going to teach a child in Spain, you need a pro license." And I said to him, "But who pays for that?" He said, "The clubs." Oh, look on the FA website. It's 40 grand to get that license in the UK.
Yeah.
And I think we've got a society of grassroots football I know there's dads that don't ask to do it are doing it, and without them, there's a lot of kids that wouldn't play football. So I don't want to be an arsehole about it, but the coaching is shit. And we've got a big problem, right? I'm being very honest.
No, listen, I hear what you're saying. I've got
I'm-
lots to say on this. I have to be careful what I say.
No, fair enough. But
that's good.
But why don't we make these courses a bit better, a bit more affordable, instead of seeing it as and I think this is a FA thing, in my opinion, and I can say it, you probably can't, but it's just like a money train, rather than actually, that's actually, because they keep chucking these rules in the hat. Right now, you got to do 3v3. You can't move up a year. You can't do it.
Yep.
But to a lot of people, it won't make any sense, because they've got no education in it. To some people, it will make perfect sense. Do you get what I mean? Like, I just think they just need to have a realistic view on these courses.
I think you've raised various issues here, and I have to be careful what I say, and try and be as honest as I can, because I can look at it with the experience of a player and as a coach developer, coach educator. In terms of, there's been some very positive things, like you initially started off by saying you would rather it be compacted.
Yeah,
that's how it was in the old days. Because of the people now in the FA, there's a lot of academics and educationalists, and they talk about blocks of learning, and then between those blocks going away to gain that experience. So there are some pluses and there are some minus points, and you've pointed out, not myself, that you would rather do it in a more compacted way. And we get different people, and that's a really good part of working in FA, of understanding that everybody's different, not everybody learns the same way. So for me, There are some positives. It used to be you assessed the people on the course, and then it went down the line of, well, this guy on the course is going to be working with adults on the course, and you're going to assess them, but they work with young children. So then we went to a stage of this is the way forward, and now it appears to have gone back that way. So there's been lots of to-ing and fro-ing. So in terms of, and you mentioned money, and that may be some of the reasons why it's changed, because we used to go and visit people on the C licence in their own environment, and then it was changed for whatever reasons. I will not question them. I have my own thoughts, and it may be money because it costs money to send us out, etc. So I don't think one size fits all. I think there are different people, but we are getting a different makeup of football coaches. Back in the day, it was very much football people, and we do say FA football for all, and that's rightly so. But there seems to be a different audience that are coming into football now. And rightly, like you say, we want to educate the grassroots coaches because, you know, in terms of the pyramid, those are the most important. And you've also talked about abroad, and I've done a lot of study visits abroad, and you rightly say about pro licence. I think it costs it's about 14, 15 grand to do your pro licence. If you've been in the game, then you get your funding, and it's only half of it. But there's so many points that you've raised, and ones that I question myself. I am supportive generally of the coaching badges. I am seeing things now where the duration of the courses was a lot longer and the prices were a lot cheaper. And now we've sort of, we question it. I say we question it. We're not always asked, but in terms of the level one used to be hands-on, practical. Level one's online now. You know, that's not my decision, but then they come on a C licence where I met yourself, and people were reluctant to actually coach. They want the coaching badge, and I think if you remember when I start off, I'm very helpful to all the learners, and that includes everybody, particularly if I identify people that might need extra support. So I pride myself on that. I pride myself on doing everything by the book, and sometimes we go over and above the course of duty to help people out. We recognise quickly that this person is maybe advanced and this one needs extra support, and I've always done that. But in terms of the days and in terms of the assessment procedures, they've changed dramatically, and it's got advantages. I think we talk about the money, and you go, well, people will question it and go, well, years ago, it might have been 10 days for a C licence. It's now 6, and the cost used to be £200, and it's now.
Well, with a discount, I think it's about 500.
So it's a lot of money.
Yeah,
so it puts people off coming in. And I think the FA do have bursaries and they're good things, but we need to understand of it's time consuming, and that's why maybe it's cut down. But in terms of that, it really should be about the quality of the coaches for me. And years ago, when I was involved with the FA, and I can remember Les Reid standing up, and the pro clubs were all invited, and Les Reid said, and Robin Russell back in the old days said, we're not too worried about the quantity of coaches, it was about the quality. And then we got heavily criticised in figures where it said Spanish have got this numbers of B licence, pro licence, A licence, France have got this. So there was a lot of criticism put on the FA. And then when we spoke to people who'd done, you know, more investigations, they wasn't up to date. These people had passed away long time ago. So they'd have 28,000 A licence when the reality was very different. So for me, you can't always go on what you hear and see, particularly now in this day and age. We know that, you know, with media and you know, social media. So I think there's lots of good things. But coming back to your point in particular, the duration of the B licence was 17 days. It's now 6 days and an assessment. And you're going, well, you've lost 10 days.
Yeah.
And it's gone up to, I don't know, £1,200. So, you know, there's lots of things that I look at and go, when I say I don't really care, I do care. But ultimately, for me, it's about the quality of coaching. And what I get concerned about, if you look at the figures, I think there's currently six British managers in the Premier League, which equates to 30%. And I've done my research on this, so I'm heavily, you know, relying on evidence as opposed to just an opinion. I look at the numbers of players that are starting off in the Premier League, 32%. Sometimes it goes down to a lower 28%. And I read a report where Gareth Southgate was talking, saying that he was concerned about the number of players coming through. So my concern, and someone who's genuinely involved in football, is why are we not producing those players to start off in the Premier League? Why have we only got 6 British coaches, and one of them's certainly to go, Scotty Parker, and whether they give Michael the job at Man United remains to be seen. So, I think we are heavily influenced by UEFA. When you talk to people in the FA, they talk about UEFA this, UEFA that. And I think we have to be, and this is maybe in politics as well, we have to worry about ourselves. We are in UEFA, we are in Europe, but surely we may come first. And if we had success in the early 2000s and you're seeing the success of the players we've got now, maybe we need to say, what did we do to produce so many players? Because even reading Gareth's thing, he's saying we're soon getting a situation where we're going to have to be picking players from the Championship to play in our national team. And whilst we have very, very good players, the depth of the players for me is not as it should be.
Yeah.
So I think there's a concern over how do we produce elite players? And I'm lucky enough to work with elite players, and I worry when some people talk about elite players and they're talking about players that are in academies. They're not elite players, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They're in the elite system, but they're not elite. And the coaches are not elite, in my opinion, having worked with a lot of them. There's some very good coaches out there. I'm not being critical. What I'm saying is actually being at the coalface and seeing it, and you're going, what's the correlation between the coaching levels and how many we've got and the quality of it? And there looks like there is a relationship between those and the players we're producing. So I think the FA are continually looking at themselves, and I think they need to look at themselves and how they do things in order to continue or start again to develop better coaches so we can have an English manager. And that's no disrespect to Thomas Tuchel. He's someone I admire without a shadow of a doubt. But in terms of when you look at what we put into coach education and the money available via the Premier League, etc., is can we produce an English coach for the national team and for the female as well? So we've got, and whilst I'm all for having the best people, meritocracy for me is the only way forward. And if they are the best coaches to head the male game and the women game, great. But now we've got to look at ourselves and go, well, what do they do in Holland? What do they do in Germany? And I've had experience of working out in Germany, and I've done lots of stuff you might bring up later where I've been to different clubs and been invited into different federations to deliver to different countries. And I'm lucky enough, and I've actually asked this, there was a podcast on, or we have something with the FA and I, they asked us what we wanted in the summer at our conference. And I asked in particular to have a Spanish coach to come in to put on a practical demonstration, because I know that in different countries, things are done different ways. And I always like to think, if we look at the best, let's look at the best. We're very good patting ourselves on the back and going, we've done this and that, great. But can we go to that next level? What do they do? I mean, France is struggling, but then there's different things. If you look at the number of players that come through, that's quite high up, that French players play in France and Germany. But if we look internationally, we need to look at both how they produce players and what they do abroad. So, like, again, going back to it, I think we need to look at ourselves. How can we improve coach education? And that starts at the bottom, because, like I say, if we can get the grassroots at this level producing and putting on more productive practices, all I heard the word is drills. Drills, as I said on the course, is what you do when you go in the army. I've got a bit of time, what to do? We need practices that are relevant to the game. We need to make sure that the grassroots coaches can see where there's consistency in what they're coaching on a Sunday aligns with what they're doing on a Saturday. Because the first thing I look at is, how'd you get on? 1-6-1, lost 6-0, 5-0, the ref cheated, their parents were horrible. And I look and I laugh and I go, guys, you need to look at yourselves. What did you work on? And this is what we're trying to say through coach education, going back to your original point about the coaching awards. If we could get people on them, some people are priced out of them, and the FA are for all, but sometimes I think we're pricing people out of it.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of reluctance. They might have had trouble with the county FA, which is totally different to the FA. And we're saying is, guys, we need to we talk about alignment all the time in the FA. We need to be really aligned. Our thinking needs to be joined up. Another FA saying, and academics and education is used. But are we just saying it, or are we going, we need better grassroots coaches? Not just, you need this and we've got one level one. Level one coach for me is someone who's done it online. And I've had it.
Yeah, that's all I've done.
And when you've done it yourself, when I've had my peer group meetings, some people don't even put their cameras on. I mention no names, or it's a general thing when we talk as tutors. So you don't know the participation, and then I can check because I'm a little bit brighter or a little bit more experienced, and I'll question that person, and they're not there. So for me, there's having a qualification and there's actually having experience, and they're two different things. And I think you could be qualified, but you may not be ready for that role. Just giving someone a qualification, whatever that is, doesn't make them equipped to do the job. And again, we go back to meritocracy. We could talk about grassroots. We need people that will give up their time, and they are the future of our country. They always have been. Everybody starts off in grassroots. So whether it's me as a coach, or whether it's me as a player, or an elite player, grassroots is the lifeline of English and British football.
Yeah, no, it's funny you talk about the courses side, because I'm one of these. You actually, I think it was you that said it.
Be careful, yeah.
No,
Go on.
I think you turned around and said something along the lines. You either are at this point where you don't think you quite know enough, or you're up there and you think you know it all, or what. It was something along them lines. That's what you said. And I remember rocking up there, nervous, because I thought, like, all I know is I've watched football all my life. I didn't really play to a high level. Did sort of just carried on watching it. Then got a son that's obsessed with it, and I've been thrown into it. But then I just realised, at first, I remember my wife saying, "Why don't you do the coaching?" When they was asking before, I said, "What am I going to teach him? I ain't got a clue." That was where I started, to the point where you get enjoyment out of it, love it. I get more excited. Me and then the other coaches, we get more excited about a string of 3 or 4 passes, because we've been working on it for 6, 7 weeks. But I still rocked up to that course thinking I know absolutely nothing. I'm at my depth for that. But the alarming part was how quick I become a voice in a group where you're like, oh, there's not many people here that know what they're doing. And it was quite concerning in aspects when you're listening, and that's not criticism to them, but it just shows you that the people that just get chucked into something and left to it. And like you said, the drills, I've never called it a drill since, because it's kind of, and I think one of the things I always quote, which I heard you say, was, who makes their kids go running around the pitch before the game starts? And everyone put their hand up. And I'm sure you said, ever seen Elton John run around a piano before he does a concert?
Yeah.
And it stuck, like them things, they stuck with me to the point where I'm like, yeah, fuck, he's right. Like, so now we only do training sessions, if you like, based on what's required on the weekend. We don't venture and think, oh, I found like a video on YouTube or whatever, and we're going to try this. Like, if it brings no relevance to where this team are at the moment, then we will. Like, I saw on a picture the other day, a guy trying to, and I'm not digging him out, but this just shows where the knowledge is needed. He was doing a pressing drill that I was doing the same drill with my under 17s that play 11v11 with an under 8s team.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they've got to retreat for a start.
Yeah.
So
it's hard to run 40 yards and press.
What are you doing? Like, you know, but I don't, I mean it respectfully, but that's just my sort of insight and experience that from sort of going through the process. I think it's so needed.
Yeah. For me, your observations are brilliant. And like I said, none of this is scripted. And your observation, exactly, they come in the door, we don't know what we're going to get. But my first conversation is to try and make them feel welcome, put them at ease, but also to say it's a journey, and this journey is for some it's going to be a lot longer than others. And I use the analogy about the driving test, which is really important because that's changing now. So I always use the analogy, and I heard it from someone else, and I'll come back to the Jose Mourinho one on the Piano. Remind me if I forget that. If you get in a driving test, go in the car for the first day, they don't say to you, you get in and they go, right, you got your driving test in 6 weeks. But on a coaching badge years ago, it was very much that you've got your assessment at the end of the time. So the advances in the FAs, some people are not ready for it, and it takes as long. So we want you to make you feel at ease and say, you know, your journey might be this long or your journey might be that long. So in terms of the experience of, did you play? Have you managed a team? So some of them people now have done a level 1 because that's a prerequisite of becoming on to do your C licence. They haven't had that experience. Whereas years ago, if you was on a level 2, the equivalent to the UEFA C now, you would have had some, we would have known you've had some coaching experience. So like you said, you went in there thinking you didn't know anything, but you went in there knowing a lot more than that. And for us, as a skill, as a tutor, is to see that you had that. And that might be called an unconscious bias, but it's obvious. You know, we get told all sorts of things, but it's called experience. You know what I mean? We get told that, you know, you might think this because this coach shouts and that. No, we can work that one out. That's experience. And people say, no, you're biased towards this person or not. No. It's experience. And you need to actually done it to maybe help others. But your observations around what I said about practices and drills, and I used it was Jose Mourinho, so you can't give me all the credit for that. But Elton John, I like that. Might change it now. Where you said, I said you don't see anybody run around the piano. If they have piano lessons, they don't run around the piano before they play it. But we in football send them running around the pitch, and I see that all the time. And I tongue in cheek laugh at it, and I thought, listen, if you're going to make them run, they're 7 or 8 years old. Do they really need that? Yes, some of them might need that, but give them a ball.
Exactly.
Give them a ball and run around the pitch. But then again, I haven't got enough balls because I've got 8 players and I only got 3 balls. So again, there's so many things. But what you rightly said now, and I said it earlier, years ago, it was football people. And I don't mean that in a discriminative way. It was more people that, you know, but now we're opening it up. And I think it's a great thing to open it up to everybody and anybody. But then we might exclude some people because of the price. So we can say it's for everybody, but do we really mean it's for everybody? And we sort of give bursaries, but we need to means test whoever we give it to.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean because I'm this or that, I haven't got no money. And there's a perception, I don't want to get into it, that because you're this, from this background, you haven't got no money. Or because you're this, you have got money. I don't think so. So I think we need to look at ourselves and how we do that. But going back to what you said, coaching is first and foremost, and we used to talk about the qualities of a coach. And we talk about when you come through that door, you come with an open mind. You come in with an open mind and you suddenly went, I don't know too much, but you knew a lot more than them. But, you know, so we try to use that, and it's hard. And I think as an experienced coach, you can see that. But when you come away from that course, hopefully we pitch it and it's like taking a session. In terms of the players you've got, it's easier to work in an academy where the players are that far apart. They talk about the top 2%, but I'm not quite sure. It may be the top 2% on figures, but it's like that. You go into grassroots, and in terms of your players, you've got that. So that's really difficult. And hopefully we try to educate you to say, you know, how do you work when you've got that difference in terms of differentiation? We talk about 3 sorts of players, those that can just about do it, those that are struggling, and those that are forging ahead. So the art of coaching and how you group them and how you work it is really important. So, you know, your observations are definitely important, and your feedback to us as tutors, and hopefully we get the opportunities to feed that back, because sometimes we don't always get together as much as we used to. And they're the things that we want to give back, because ultimately we want to make coaching better. Yeah. We want England to win the World Cup, male and female. We want coaches to have the best, if you like, toolbox so they can use all those tools.
Yeah, and I think the important part that people need to understand, and maybe even those that feedback goes to, is what benefits they get. 1, what benefits do you get from investing the money into yourself? And 2, what would the FA gain through lowering or giving a little bit more financial support to a lot more different areas where it's needed? So, for example, I had the under-17s team, not long took them over, 0 confidence, fucking couldn't win. To where we used to have a joke that when I used to meet my friends from the younger team in the pub afterwards, because I'd always be late because I'd have to stay on and do that second game.
Yep.
Like at one point I had half a pub singing "You're going to get sacked in the morning," and it was all laugh and jokes and whatever. We're now unbeaten in 11 games and gone bottom to 3rd. Like, we've parents of 17-year-olds and 16-year-olds going, it's the best season they've ever had all their life. They're full of confidence. That confidence is now that he's gone out and decided to get a job, an apprenticeship. He's doing it. And I think I am nothing special. All I've done is sit, listen, go away and just use the tools that have been given to me to use. That is all I've done.
And what would you say
Tools.
them tools were? If you could pick 1 or 2 points really that have made a difference to your team, what would they be?
Planning, 100% planning, to knowing what I'm going to do in terms of a session. I'll level with you. I might not always write it out as we're asked to, but I certainly know the process now.
Yeah.
And in my head, I'm prepared. I know what's in the bag. I know what I've got to take. I know what I'm going to be coaching for that hour, that 2 hours. And I don't veer away from it.
No.
I stick with it. Even if I see something now, I don't change. I just might, like you said, I think it was called a drive-by. That I might go and whisper in his ear and say, look, just he's getting a bit of it that way. Why don't you try that sort of encouragement, arm around the shoulder? That 100% shutting up, stepping back, and actually watching what I need to coach rather than coaching what I think I need to coach. That's the big one, I think, for me. Like I set the drill up, I explain and go through it, and I go through it 3 or 4 times slowly, and then I just leave them for 5 to 10 minutes. And then I'll just step in, and then that's when I think we start getting results.
I think you made some valid points there, and obviously you've picked up on the things that we try and educate people with. And what you said, the planning and preparation is really important. And a saying that we've had in the FA for years is, by failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail. Probably used that and bored you on there. So in terms of when I look back at my own and I look at myself, is I would just do lots of different things. And I think from the UEFA C licence, what we're trying to say is concentrate on a theme, 1 or 2 at the most, i.e. a technical practice, really focus on that, and then develop that into maybe years ago we used to call a skill practice, but do something where you work in isolation to hone the practice.
Yep.
And even though you're 17-year-olds, particularly with the younger ones, and then go into a practice where they get opportunity to make decisions. Do I play to him? Do I play to her? And then take it into the game. Whereas what you can do, you can flit and go from here to there, and you can work on so many different things. I see it in non-league. I see it in the pro game even. I see people at academies, and you're thinking, well, they've gone through the system. What are they working on? And I go through it. I think what you've been working on. So for me, the bits that you've taken from it is the planning, and not always stepping in every moment. Where you've worked on a theme, work on that. And I could tell you some stories of some well-known people in the game that have been given a theme, and they may have played as a defender for England, and they had an attacking theme, and I won't say names. And every time the defending was poor, it was like, now you manage the other team and you want the defending to be realistic, but if your attacking was like attacking in wide areas, then you don't want to focus on the defending.
Yeah.
So again, for me, what you've taken from there is plan, stick to that theme. And the evidence is it works because you've taken a team. A lot of people go, what's development? And development's lots of different things. Winning is part of development, which we don't like talking about. Development is development, and we talk about the different stages of development and what the goals should be. But like you say, at 17, it starts where they want to win, and it doesn't become enjoyable. And coming back to your point of saying you get sacked in the morning, I can be with a household name who you know, who's been a manager. It's me and Stimo, and we was the same when we went into Margate. We couldn't get a win for love nor money. And we used to get in a car back home and go, when are we going to win? When are we going to win? Admittedly, we did go in during the season after the previous manager was sacked, and Mark hadn't had the best time previously, but we'd get in a car and go, here we go again. No matter what we did, but all of a sudden, like you say, what you've encountered, so it don't just happen at that level. We know it happens at the top, but happens down the bottom as well. But again, you need to be able to be respective of looking at and going, the bigger picture. So for you, there must be a great feeling to turn a team round with the same players and to implement your ideas, plan, prayer, and implement them and see, and then all of a sudden the players are on your side. So now when you go in and go, we're going to do this practice. But the other point you raised was really important about 8-year-old, working with 8-year-olds, trying to do the same practice with you. And you made the point about the relevancy of the line, and he wants to press. Well, you can't press because you're 30 yards away. Well, I hear it in non-league football. I see it in pro football. Press, press. He's 15 yards away from the ball. So they have a total lack of understanding of the game.
Yeah.
But like you say, if you've gone on your coaching badges and we get more people going through it, suddenly they'll have an understanding, a real understanding, and that's not to say they don't have an understanding of what they think football is, and everybody does. But I think it helps to educate them to know what you're looking for. And I always say, if you don't know what's lost, how can you find something you don't know what's lost? Yep. Once it's been pointed out to you, these are the things that you need to focus on, concentrate and work on, then you can do that, and then you see the results.
Yeah, and I also think that there'll be a massive percentage that would actually enjoy coaching more should they go through it, because I've definitely changed, and I now look at some people and I go, "My mate, I weren't like that, was I?" He went, "Yeah, sometimes." I think, "Oh God, I wasn't."
We've all been there.
Like, you just think, really, like, and we, like, even the under-10s, when my son's in, that the football that they play, and I think you might have seen a few bits we shared on social media, and that is since the course, in terms of, and don't get me wrong, I've got 2 other dads that have not done the courses, but they are very supportive.
You need to write to the FA and tell them how good your tutors were.
And and just that pushing on, just that we work together, they listen, we communicate as a free, and we've worked so hard with them, and we've just let them take themselves to whatever level they played. Like, they started the year, like, I think beginning of last season, they started, I think, like Division 6 or whatever, it's 6 or 7, wherever it was. And they played 6 games, and the way they do it in our league is, right, we'll see after 6 games. They got moved up one, moved up one, moved up one, eventually got themselves up. They've got themselves all the way to Division 2, where they are 100% in the right division. They're not got too high, and to be fair, one's probably a little bit of an ask with the current squad, but they've done it themselves.
Yeah,
they've not done it because I've messaged the league rep 6 or 7 times a day because I believe I'm going to be a Division 2 team, and that's all you hear is the obsession. Like I got the last year when we got to the semi-finals of the cup. Bearing in mind this is under 9s football, I'm like, who the fuck told them we were playing in a semi-final? They're kids. They rock up, they see other kids in different colour kits, and they just play football. Like, why have we got to put this untold pressure on? Like, they do know, but if we didn't say nothing, they wouldn't have a clue what division they're in.
No, I
think
what you've said is really important. The kids just want to play football.
Yep.
It's the parents that put the pressure on them. It's the same at the pro clubs. I've been there. I know that. So for me, the lessons to be learned is let them play. Still support them, because, like I say, there's lots of people that want to stay out of instructions. And I hear coaches go, we put on stuff that Barcelona, because the internet is dangerous. Yep. The internet is very dangerous. It's good in some ways, but they go, here's a practice from... And I question things. I put things on social media you might be aware of, and I've seen the way your team play, and you literally play out from the back. And playing out from the back is not just about playing to the 2 central defenders or back 3, whoever you set up. It's getting them to educate them to play the right pass. And that might be missing out the 2 central defenders and going straight into midfield. So there's an obsession now, as we see in the EFL, with teams trying to play out, not very good at it, and them not having a plan B. Or some people are obsessed with thinking playing out is just literally playing to the 2 centre halves, when it might mean going to full back or missing him out, or even it in the front. And we see Man City do that because everyone's gone man to man. They've just opened up that space and they just pop it through. But your observations around, for me, the parents need to understand, and it's the parents that need educating. The kids just want to play. Let them play. Chuck a few things to help them, and I'm sure it'd be a better environment on the side. And if they were able to be consistent, and if they've actually worked on something during the week and taken that into a game, that's success, rather than being obsessed with the result. Because let's be fair, you could have a really good team. You could play a team that's so much better than you, and the kids almost come off. You can see because they've got beat, because the parents got beat 8-1. Not about what they did do well, and that you're probably never ever going to beat them, but we've improved. So, yeah, onwards, upwards, and it's nice that you were commendable around the coaching badges. So for me, it shows it is working, but we need more people on the courses to be able to affect what goes on.
Yeah, no, we definitely need to find that middle ground, that's for sure. So back to you. Who's the best player you've ever coached?
Oh, I tell you what, that is a good question. I've been lucky enough and privileged enough. I don't know if you know the players that I've worked with. Worked with many people that have gone on to play international football over the number of years I've been coaching. And I'm going to name a few because it's a different. There is one in mind that springs out more than anyone else. So I've been lucky enough to work with. And it's a long time ago. I started off at Leighton Orient. So let's look at some of the players that I was lucky enough to work with. Adi Akinbaye, and that's a
Yeah,
long time ago. I don't know if you remember him.
Yeah, remember him.
Micah Hyde, Chrissy Bart Williams, God rest his soul, who was an absolute legend. Darren Purse, who went on to Birmingham as well. There was Glenn Paul, so you'd know through that, and that was a different club. But going back to, I'll come on to that in a minute. But Orient, there was like Barry Lakin, players like that, and then you're lucky enough to go into an environment where I went to Charlton. I had Kevin Nichols, Kevin Lisby, Paul Terry, Scott Parker was 3 years younger than them. I'm trying to think the centre half that played. There were so many players, and then I got my dream move to Spurs through Patsy, and I worked with my first team at Spurs. Look at this for a team. I had Crouchy. Crouchy didn't come in straight away. I had Ledley King. Oh, I had Orient Ledley King as well. So I worked with Ledley for about 3 or 4 years. In the days you didn't get to sign one team, you would do everything. So Ledley, how could I forget Ledley? And then you go into Spurs, and then you got Ledley again. You got Crouchy. You got Glenn Paul, Johnny Jackson. Over the years you had Marnie, and go to where we go after that? Where did I go after that? West Ham. So then you have, and on Ferdinand, you have Elliot Wald, you have Kieran Richardson, and then you get James Tompkins, Noble. So many players that I've been lucky enough. I probably learnt more off them than they ever learnt off me. Got a nice mention in Ledley's book, so that's why I'm going to pick him. So out of all the players, Jermaine Defoe at Charlton as a kid. He was at West Ham when I went there, but I didn't work with him. So good luck to him with his new gig at Woking.
Yeah.
We'll probably talk about that later. But out of all the players, the best, without a shadow of a doubt, and there's some great players in there. James Tompkins, Freddie Sears, there's so many. Glenn Johnson. Who else we got? Glenn Johnson. Who's now Esri, Konza, Shelby. Just that goes on in this, and I apologise to anyone if any of them are watching this that I've worked with. But the question you asked specifically was who. Now it's not easy when you've had so many, but Ledley King for me was the Rolls Royce. Ledley had everything, and we produced players at Spurs, and we was in the ball court at White Hart Lane. Didn't have 2 players per coach, or 2 coaches per team. We didn't have all this and all that. We just produced football players at West Ham. I look at them now and I'm going, what's going on West Ham? What's going on Spurs? That's not a dig. It's just honesty and going, well, everything's got so much better now, but why? But Ledley, if I remember running around White Hart Lane, so it's pre-season, the ball court was being used. Moncur says to me, John Moncur Senior said, go on White Hart Lane. Go on White Hart Lane. I was like, don't go on the pitch. Let's do some running. What else can you do? So we've got to make it worthwhile. I remember Glenn Paul was in that age group. Pat Jennings, boy might have been in there. Patrick, he might have been that age group. But it didn't matter if I did running, 10 metres, 40 metres, round the pitch. It didn't matter if you did 1v1 defending. You couldn't get past Ledley. If you had 1v1 attacking, Ledley would go past everybody. Whatever you did, that boy, and he was a boy at the time, who wanted to become a great player, could do everything. 2-footed, great attitude, the nicest family in the world, supportive family, his mum in particular, and he was an absolute dream and legend to work with. And for me, whilst I had all them others and Jermaine scored goals here and he's done this and, quietly back in the day had saying some dealings with Michael, but Ledley was like, what a privilege to be around such a boy who grew into a man who was a one club man and a legend of a person. And people, I haven't met Ledley, I haven't seen, but there's people that I've spoken to I've said, when you see Ledley, because they see him, give him my kindest regards. And an absolute legend. And when I see him now, I want to go, mate, you've done brilliant. And I was lucky enough to be around you. And he mentioned me in his book. So for me, not because he mentioned me in a book, there's a few others mentioned me, whether it's in a good light or bad light, I don't know. But Ledley was very complimentary. Oh, you're in Ledley's book. And when people tell me, what is it? You had a dig at him. So that was a point. And I can remember taking him aside, and there was 3 players that come in that we nicked when I was at Spurs, that come in from Orient. And then he was getting a little bit, you know what I mean, a little bit testy, that age group. And I remember it, and he puts it in a book, and I didn't dig him out. I gave him some advice, constructive criticism, if you like. And the very fact is that he remembered me for doing it.
Tells you he
What
needed it.
more can you want as an endorsement? And then, and I just thought, if all those players I work with, if I just would have had 1 week's money of each of them added up, I would have a lot of money. So, but no, the experience and the privilege for me was to be lucky enough to work at those clubs and be able to have my input to some fantastic, great players who had superb careers.
So in terms of Ledley being the Rolls Royce, you've got what would you say now is the biggest mistake in young footballers coming through?
Are you talking at the top level or just in general?
No, stay top level.
I think the problem, the world's changed, and I think there's a lot of pushy parents out there. Kids are getting agents, they're getting smoke blown up their backsides. They believe there's someone not. They want to live the life of a pro, or what they perceive is a pro. At 14, 15, they want an agent. They want dad's got a nice car. My boy this, my boy that. And you're like, you ain't done nothing yet. I played with real players, and every single one of them that went on had a good attitude. They wanted to, and I use Mark Noble as that. There's many I can talk about, but those players that go on have all got great attitudes. I've been called in a few times at different clubs because people would question me. And you told the boy this and you had to go at him this. Really? Don't go into football. It's an industry that's ruthless. So whether it's in playing or coaching, and then you have to deal and manage up and manage down in non-league, and you look at the people and you think, oh my God, there's a lot of a-holes in football. There's a lot of wannabes. But going back to the players itself, the players need to do what players need to do. Focus on playing. Forget all the trappings, because they see the players with their cars and their houses and their girlfriends and everything else, but they forget what got them there. So for me, forget agents, although saying that, then you go look at the boy who's at Arsenal, local lad.
Oh, yeah. Downham. Is it Downham? Downham. I know
Downham.
Downman.
Downman. I think he lives in Downham. I shouldn't say that. But no, he's a great prospect. And then obviously things will change. But in terms of his attitude, I don't know his dad. I know that the family had something to do with Billericay. I've even got his dad's number on my phone for some reason. I think it was when I was doing stuff at Billericay. I've never spoke to him. I wouldn't do that. I'm not like that. But the boy has obviously got his head focused. His parents are really instrumental in defining where he ends up because, like I say, I've seen a lot of good players who come through at an early age, but they can't sustain it. I'm hoping for Max, Arsenal and England that he can sustain it and he goes on to become a real legend because, but again, the sacrifices he's already made.
This is it. He's
going to school. He's working with a ball. He's going into Arsenal. He can't do this. In dressing room, he can't be with the players and safeguarding, blah, 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 blah. But the parents need to be level-headed. The parents need to trust the people that are giving them advice. And I think there's a lot of people in football today, particularly in agents, and I'm not criticising all agents and agencies, but there's some wrong ones out there, and I've had personal dealings with them. There's some very good agents, by the way, who will give them the support they need and aren't too fussed about making a buck out of them. Yep. It's really about giving them the right advice. And a lot of these agents haven't been in football or they've been around it. And I think the best agents have been around football, have been played, maybe have coached or not coached, but they understand what can go on when you're in and you've got all that hype going on around you. But attitude for me and resilience to rejection and not being picked, being given something you don't like, will get on with it, because in the academies, I think sometimes the academies don't help them because they talk about development. They talk about, this and that. They don't talk about what they can't do. So we need to be positive and say this is what they're good at, but we need to say you need to work on that, and you need to be coachable. So my non-negotiables is you got to be coachable, because the day you go from in the development where it's all nicey, passy, and then you go and step up with the first team manager like Mark Noble did at 15 and go and play in the reserves, you're in with the big boys then. They don't care. They'll go in there, and if it's there to be won, they'll go and win it. You go in there cocky, they'll put a tackle in, as I know with other clubs I've been at with players who've done their knee. So my best advice for any young player is listen to those that know, who've been around it, and sort your attitude out. That's the most important thing.
Excuse me. That's perfect. That went down the wrong hole at the wrong time, didn't it? Oh, Jesus.
Choke up chicken.
Oh,
I thought he was getting emotional there and crying.
oh dear. Literally went to speak and breathe in at the same time. Not recommended. So, my voice has gone now and all. How brutal is non-league football? We're going to just move to more of... Oh, God, hold on.
Go on, get that down,
We have to edit this out, I think.
Keep it in, eh? Shows how much talking you've done more than me, and that takes a lot.
Yeah. So non-league football compared to top level or top tier football, I don't know what the right word would be. How brutal is it?
I think when you talk about non-league football, it's very generic. There's people that play non-league football, but they're like part players. No disrespect, because you've got step 1, National League, and you've got the step 4 and 5. I've had experience of every level of football. When I look at it, I've been in a pro club that's been in the Premier League, that's been in the Championship, that's been in Division 1, Division 2. So top tiers of football I've had experience of, in academies, and then going into the next 4 levels, so from Tier 1 to 8, the National League, the experience with Stevenage and Stimo, and Macclesfield with Kingy, and two stints at Maidstone. Then going down to step 2 with Bishop Stortford, and then step 3, Margate, and I had 2 spells there. I had one many years ago with Chris Kinnear. And then going down to step 4, and with Welling as well, step 2, step 3. So I've been at every level. So when you say non-league, there's lots of players go, I'm a non-league player. No, they're not. They're part players playing in step 4. And I've had a few of them. I won't name them. I wouldn't be as unprofessional to do that. But it's ruthless, because if you go in as either a manager or coach, we talk about philosophies. There's only one philosophy you've got to win. And if you're a club, owners, for me, there's lots of different owners. Bad owners, poor chairman, good chairman. So I've got good experiences and bad experience. I will never name those that are poor. But in terms of the industry itself, football's ruthless. It is absolutely ruthless. Today, an hour before I come in, my good friend, and I mentored him as a coach, Angelo Harrod, the news is he's no longer at Chelmsford. So today, the day that we've done that, and I dropped him a message before I come in. I didn't phone him because obviously I know what it's like. Done a great job at Chelmsford, and they are no longer required for whatever. I mean, obviously, I'd like to think I know some of the reasons and might get a little bit of heads up on that later on. But again, you don't go into a club, and I've done it myself. I've gone in and supported a manager where we've been down the bottom. We have got a great result, the players, because it's not me that runs around on the pitch anymore. And then I come off expecting to go in there. No, I don't want you in here. And we beat a top side. And then, again, I go into a club that's second from bottom, like we finished mid-season, mid-level. You'll get a contract next year. You'll come full-time. You do a great job. You take them out of the mire. You don't do it personally, but your organisational skills and your ability to turn people around. And I've done it at Bishop Stortford as well with Rod. And I mention Rod because in a positive, Rod's very much get on with it. But in terms of the reality of where it sits in football, it's ruthless. And I see people continually get jobs on the merry-go-round. And, Glenn Road always said to me, some people make, God rest his soul, some people make a success out of being a failure. So there's people in non-league football the same. They get jobs. You look at them and think, they ain't going to do any good. What happens? They don't do it. They don't do it. They get another job. And you look at the owners and you think, what are you doing? You got someone who's not a football person. I say I'm a full-time football person, and we had this conversation with Stimo, and there'll be appointments, and we look at each other, and he'll go, he ain't a full-time football person, or he ain't a football person. So, the chairman, and they're good, and I always question chairman and owners, and I go, they've been successful, lots of them, in their business. Some of them are not. They might get there through untoward ways. They've got other businesses, let's just say. They that have been successful in their businesses then go into football, something they know nothing about, or they have a perception of what they think it's about, and then they appoint people, and you're like, really? What about those that have been in football their life since they're 12 years old? And I've had it when I've been interviewed. Why haven't you been a manager? Well, I've been a manager in the female game, and I've been an assistant manager. And if you work with someone you can trust and they let you get on with it, great. But again, ruthless industry. I've met some very nice people and I've met some horrible people. And that's the way football goes. But you have to accept that. And that's what I'm saying is, you get a job, you lose it. You get a job, you get an opportunity when someone messes up. You try and change it. You try and get the players to go in training again. Well, it's not in our contract. We want more money. So I think the thing I've learned from it is you need to have a relationship with an owner and know what they want, what their expectations are. Because, some of you have got expectations that they want to stay up and the budget's no bad. So you do need someone who's good, who's organised. Then you've got someone who wants to be in the top 6 but give you a budget that's like top 12, not in the top 6. So, there's lots of things and I'll have this conversation with Angelo about when you go into a club, you must know what the expectations of the club are, and you must know your players, because recruitment is everything. So the recruitment of players is paramount. And when you go into an environment where your players are of that lower level mentality, and that's why they're playing there, and that's not out being disrespectful, because they could be a player like I've had Dwight Gale in step 4 or 5 that's on the way up. But you've got players that really think they're better than what they are. And all of a sudden, it's all about the culture within the club. We talk about culture, and I've been into clubs where the culture's poison, and the owners recognise that. Right man, wrong time. Okay, but you might need to change your players over a period of time. So there's lots of things that you need to take in consideration when, number one, you accept a job. Don't just accept a job because it's offered. But number two, you need that relationship with the owners, chairman, managers if you're the number two, because trust is everything in football. And I think there's a lot of people, like in modern day life and politics, that you have a perception of, but you can't trust them.
Yeah.
And that's all I'm prepared to say on that. But all the ones that are good out there know who they are. The ones who are poor, they know who they are as well, and they can take that how they like. But like I said, I wouldn't be as unprofessional to knock that. But I'm saying is, if those clubs want a professional person who wants someone who's more than a manager, who's going to educate your coaches, who's going to bring young players through, why wouldn't you want that person? Why would you want a person that, I know managers that get appointed because they bring money into the club.
Yeah.
And they know who they are. They put their own money up. And you're like, well, you can't blame the chairman or owners to want them to bring them in. But you go like, pay for your own job? That's crazy. You know what I mean? But there are clubs out there that are prepared, and there are managers out there that are prepared to put money into a club to secure a position.
People like the status, than they are. Listen, even my short experience in non-league football, I'll call people out that just want a jacket with an initial on it. There's just a lot of them, and I'm only talking about one or two people, but I'm sure if I went into every single club in non-league, I'd be able to find a handful in every single one.
Yeah.
They just exist, unfortunately. Do you think the money now is killing non-league football? Because it's outrageous, isn't it? The last 3 years.
Yeah, the levels have different money. I was surprised when I went in before Christmas in a club, and I've gone into other clubs. I'm surprised at the money that there's in there or out there, and some of these players are getting. And it's if we look at the highest levels, or not even the highest levels, and like again, I wouldn't be as unprofessional to name the people. I know people that are playing and getting over $3,000 a week in step 2 and people in step. There might be players in there that are getting less money. So there's money in there.
Well, I know
And
a
I
player in
took,
step 4 getting two grand a week.
yeah. So
So
we know
it's
what club
insane,
you're
isn't it?
talking
Yeah, but it's
about.
insane, isn't it?
And there's a club that, that I've played against this season. And some people will buy their way out. And I'm going, and it's happened in the future to local clubs here, where they've bought their way out step 3 to step 2. And they've got lots of personalities in. And if you're able to do that, great. But I still say at the end of the day, even though the club I think you're referring to, we won't name, you still need somebody at the top. And it's like going, let's have all the magicians, the best musicians in the world. If everybody's a great musician, I still need a conductor, someone to lead them. So it don't necessarily buy you success. People think that money buys you success. What it does, it gives you the opportunity to bring in better players. But again, I revert back to, it's not just about what they bring on the field technically, it's what do they bring off the field.
Yeah.
What do they do? How influential are they with other players in a positive way and not a negative way, as some can be, and I've seen myself and witnessed myself. So I think when you go in there, you have to be strong-minded, and ultimately you need to get the players on the side because they're the ones that are going to bring you success, or the player power, in my opinion, is too much now. But going back to your original decision about money, you need a good amount of money to bring in reasonable players, but it's not everything. And I think it's about getting the balance right. And chairman would do good to remember that it's about the people you bring in. So if you don't recruit the best players, then you better be recruiting the best managers, coaches. And I've worked with some managers, and I'm not being disrespectful. You need all different skill sets in a football club. And for me, there's managers I've worked with haven't got a clue about football. They have, if you ask them, but you put them on a training ground or ask them to go, they haven't got a clue. And the best ones are the ones that go, I'm not that mate, I run it, I'm the manager, I manage it, and you do that, and they trust you. Whereas others want to be a manager and want to be a coach, and they have no idea of the game itself, and I think it's laughable. But credit where credit's due, and I pick out people like Stimo, and I pick out Rod. Rod's very much a motivator, lets you get on with it. He's had great success. So the people I've worked with, Kingy, or don't really get on with, but you have to look at and say what he's done. He's had success.
Yeah.
He's not really what I would call a football, and that's not criticism. He trusts the people who has around him. And I know in the past he's had Junior Lewis and that. So, but you look at what he's achieved and you go, well, I've worked with him and I see what works well. And like Rod had promotion into the conference. Didn't take it with Braintree. Stimo's had promotions in the Football League. And I've heard people slaughter him. And I've been lucky enough to work with him. And I had a fallout with him many years ago. But we're men, we sorted it out, we move on. And now, like when I went in with before, where he was doing all the coaching, can you do it? Or was he blaming me for struggling? No, he's not doing that, and he wouldn't do that. But like I say, there was other things, circumstances, when you go into a club, training only one night, training on a Thursday night, when you should be training on a Tuesday, and 6 players that are contracted and don't want to then go and train an extra night without renegotiating contracts. So there's lots of politics in football, but for me, non-league is a fantastic part of the game. It's the only part of the game where you don't have to be qualified to coach.
Yeah.
So if you want to work with kids, you need a qualification. You want to work in Division 2, you need a qualification, Premier League pro licence if you're going to head it up. Non-league, you don't. And I know there's certain managers who say, I don't need it because, whatever, and don't want to get involved in that. But there's a lot of them that have got knowledge. But there's different, like I said, different skill sets you need. People need contacts. I've got people I've worked with, they're just a contact. They've got a little black book and they can get that. But you've also got to be careful they don't bankrupt you or use your budget up, and then they want more money. And then you'll get others. So there's all sorts of different people and characters that I've met in the game. But my advice for anyone going into a non-league game, just play, enjoy it. Don't go up the road for another 50 quid. Or down there.
It's a big one.
There are mercenaries in there.
Oh, 20 quid.
20 quid, yeah, 20 quid. But like I say, my advice to owners and chairmen, get a football person in. And I've had conversations and meetings, and I've been interviewed for jobs at the higher levels, and when you've sat down with them, and you talk about your experience, and when you've gone in as an assistant manager or coach, you've turned them round, and you've done it 3 times at the higher level, and they go, well, why haven't you been a manager? Tell me, you're the board, you're the owners. Here I am. Do you want me? Well, we're taking a chance. We take a chance on anybody. So for me, and that conversation evolved around for me going, well, when you went in there, it went up. Is that because the manager bounced? Well, no, I've come in not as a manager. I've come in as the coach. Okay, but isn't that coincidental? Well, it didn't just happen for 5 games. It happened for 11, and the manager won Manager of the Month, and you went from there to there. So for me, like I said, I think if people in the clubs that own clubs were to do more research, and rather than just look at those that have gone in, failed, got another job on the merry-go-round, and Glenn Roeder always said it to me, he said, once you get in there, once you're in there, you're in there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not the same for everyone in the EFL, and we're talking about levels. But in terms of non-league, same old suspects are putting in for jobs. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but, he's been a manager, we put him in. We haven't done it. We got beat. He goes, so yeah, it's up to, when you own the club, when you're the chairman, you pick who you like. It's their toy. But I would be a little bit more selective in the people that I chose. And I'm only saying that because, you like to think someday you're resilient enough to get the opportunity.
So, just to interrupt, just in a way, just give me a little insight. Right? I own a football club.
Yeah.
And I'm bringing you in.
Yep.
What's your vision for that team, club levels? What do you think you would bring, or what would you bring? Not think. What would you bring that benefits a club per se?
Well, I can tell you what I offer, but like I said to you, I want to know what you actually want, because I've thought about this long and hard, and I'm trying to get myself out there at the moment, and I need to upgrade my CV, etc. What I can offer you is someone that's had a footballing background since he's 12 years old, a lot of years, who will give 100%. He has access to the latest coaching methods. He's a hands-on coach. He doesn't just want to manage. He wants to improve the team. I will improve any team. So whether it's in possession, out of possession, transition, restarts. So you have to get the right level, because the mentality is when you go in, you're giving us too much information. And when you're going in that step 4 level, that's what you get. And I go, well, I don't mind going into a step 4 club if it's a club that's progressive, that it really does as a vision, that wants to develop. It has the resources, it has decent pitch, decent facilities. It gets the backing of the club.
That's 99% of them out of step 4. Is that
right? Okay.
I'm only joking.
But no, I hear what you're saying. So beggars can't be choosers. But again, you have to go. I'm not going to just take a club because I might come across and
you lost them all at good pitch.
Yeah. But then you go. You talk about philosophies. I want to play good football. What's good football? We was asked that when we went at Macclesfield. I want to educate players to say that people are obsessed with playing this out from the back. For me, coaches and managers have to understand what can I work with. I can't make a silk purse out of a pig's ear. But then again, if I accept that job, then I have to play to what I've got rather than try and play a brand of football that I can't. So the considerations that you get from me, you get someone that will be organised as much or more than anyone that I know, and that was a compliment paid to me by John Beck. And you put yourself up there for shooting down. I'm saying is, well, if you know a little bit of football, come and watch. And maybe that's the thing for owners. Can you put some sessions on? Let's see what you can do. Let's talk to the players. What's the detail like? But you'll get someone that's committed, that knows players, but wants to work with the players that he's got, and that could be a mistake. And that's a mistake I've made in the past by giving everybody a chance, as opposed to bringing players in because the chairman or owners assume that you're just going to bring him in straight away. Well, that's all right if you get appointed at the start of the season or before the season ends, so you can bring your players in. When you get thrown in at the deep end, October, November, whenever, because the person that you brought in and brought his players in, and you've stuck with them for whatever reason. So, but someone who wants to develop the club, someone who wants to spend time, and if it's got a youth set up, deliver things for its coaches that will support the development of the club, get the development team in to say, come on, look, this is what we work on. But someone who's not just in there and out, take their money, doesn't talk to anybody, someone that's quite articulate, has an understanding of business, can manage up and manage down. not just deal with the players, because when you go into them bigger clubs, you understand it's about dealing with the owners, it's dealing with the chairman, it's dealing with the press, it's dealing with the media. And for me, I see some people in the front of the camera, and I know it sounds terrible. When you hear them talk and you think, oh my God, who have they got here? The way they talk to the camera, the way they talk in terms of the language they use in they don't sound like football people. So for me, you need to take all those things into account. And I think the more serious owners and clubs will want someone who's more articulate, and not only articulate, they don't care if he's not articulate, but he gets results. And at the end of the day, that's something that I've left till last is, if you don't get results, you can have philosophies, you can have ideas, you're not going to last long. And that was Tony Pulis said that. He talked about the modern coach, and he talked about all this rollicks, as he said, and he said the real word about a philosophy. Forget a philosophy. If you get into a EFL club and you don't get results, bang goes your philosophy, you're not getting another job. So for me, it's about balance. It's being able to sit down with the owners and say, what are your expectations? This is what I can offer. Are you going to support me? And it might do that before it does that.
Yeah.
And I know they can't afford to go down or whatever, but you have to get the right players in. And for me, part of my next job will be talking to the players and saying, would I want to go to war with you? Because I want to play attractive football. I want to play out from the back. But really want to educate them to play. You play where the space is. If they push up, that's where we play. If they drop off, then we've got to entice them out or play through them or around them. But not being able to talk it, because a lot of people can talk it, but they can't actually demonstrate and show the players how to do it. And again, it is about the players, because if you work with players that are happy with their money, but they don't want to be open-minded, they don't want to be responsive, or they don't want to be accountable. So I had players, and I've had players don't want to be accountable. Yeah. And when you win games and they don't celebrate the win, it's almost like, okay, I accept that I'm not your cup of tea. Maybe I'm too honest for you. And they may have an idea that I'm going to bring my players in time. You have to be really cute on that one. When people don't want to win and enjoy winning, what have you got? This is not the right club. This is the wrong mentality. This is the wrong environment. And, all those things we talk about in the FA about going in and setting an environment and creating an environment that's conducive to improving players and hopefully wanting them to go on. And I've had this conversation. What do you want to do? Where do you want to play? Where does the club see itself? I've worked with players that have gone on and I want them to go on. And if the club gets and I talk about Kitely back in the day and, players that you've worked with, and then the club, Grays do very well out of it. And hopefully the club has the common sense to have the understanding that if they put a sell-on clause to someone, they go on, then you might get that. So for me, I've been lucky enough to work in development. So you talk about coach education, development of players, frontline coaching. I've done all three.
Yeah.
And I'd like to say that I have an experience of all three of them. And I've been relatively successful when I've been with the right people and at the right clubs. So that's what you get if you go, what can you offer a club? That's what I offer.
Nice. Very interesting and insightful. So you've mentioned a few names. So who has been your biggest inspiration or people that have been really vital in your career?
It's a great question. It is one I've been asked before, and it's one I think about continually because I remember them as they're getting older. And I look at them at different ways. As a player, Pat Holland was very instrumental as a player, and Jimmy Allabone. Not a lot of people will know that name. He was my youth coach at Leyton Orient, and I think when people get older, they mention the big names and they mention the people that go on. But I like to think that I remember my days as an early player, with Jimmy and Patsy, and in terms of the coaching, Johnny Cartwright was a legend. He was probably the best, and this upset people that I worked with afterwards. I worked with John Cartwright. John Cartwright was a technical director. Hasn't always got on with the FA. He fell out with them as he got older, but he was a technical director at the School of Excellence up at Lillishall. But I was lucky enough to work with him at Charlton for a year, and I don't put on drills. I put on practices, and I think I mention it when I talk about he never coached drills. He coached the game. So whereas the FA, talks about let the teacher be the game, let the game be the teacher, was his motto. But he actually coached within the game. Whereas a lot of people just think putting a game on, the players are going to learn and work it out. And I hear these coaches say, yeah, they'll work it out because they've been told it on courses, educational courses all over. The players will work it out, private ones, etc. The players won't work it out. The players don't work it out. And I don't want to go off track, but I have a saying. Average players and coaches want to be left alone. Good players and good coaches, potential coaches, want to be coached. Yep. Elite coaches and elite players, they want honesty. They want you to tell them the truth. So I see that as three. But coming back, my biggest influences, John Cartwright, John Gorman was around it as well when I went into Orient. Jeff Pike. I don't want to forget anyone. I worked with John McDermott in the early days on a course, and when we did coach education stuff, he's now, and Les Reid. So I've been privileged enough to work with 3 of England's technical directors, which is really good. I always put Ted Dow up there, someone I worked with in the FA, Pikey. There's been lots of different peoples, and I don't want to forget anyone. But in non-league, and I can't forget him, Stimo gave me my first job when I come out of Orient. Come out of West Ham, had a bit of aggro there. He took me under his wing to work with Mark, and we did have a falling out soon after that. But to hear him in a dressing room, working with pro players and give me the responsibility of taking the reserves and then bringing me in with Scott at the games at Stevenage and seeing someone who went on very successful, who got promotions, like I say, in the EFL when he went up. And Gilliam, I know he went down, but he went up. And to listen to him talk about his experiences of the people that he played under. And he didn't have he had a good career. Don't think, he had a better career than me. But the stories that you tell when you sit with people about Kevin Keegan or the people in Spurs, and we knew the same people in Spurs, to listen to him. And I hear people criticise him, but his man management for me was first class. And there wasn't a better example of that when we was in the trophy final. 2006, I'd never seen Mark lose his temper ever. And I'd watched him in the dressing room with players that were really good, Barry Fuller, Adam Miller, I'm trying to think of all the Stevenage players back in the day. There were so many, and I remember it vividly. We went in at half-time, and I was lucky enough, he said, you want to be part of the coaching staff, play it in the trophy final? Of course I wouldn't be. Why wouldn't I want to be a part of it? Come in, be in the dressing room, be on the bench. I'm sitting next to the guy at Wembley Stadium. Scott's out there doing his bit. He's going to now be the manager, wins 3 on the trot, or 3 before even won another one, his 4th one. And there I'm sitting next to him. And we was 2-0 down at half-time. And there was a little incident that occurred. The ball went out of play, didn't get back. And then I see the 2 managers have words with each other. And I know when Mark's gone. And I'm looking at Mark going, size of I am, but yeah, he's going off, and little disturbance in the tunnel. And then we go in the dressing room, and I think, right, he sits down, we're 2-0 down. Probably, Steve Morrison's in there, and, we'd seen the papers that day, and a couple of players had gone on, and it was a case of, where do we go from here? You imagine you're 2-0 down, you've got all your supporters. I think there was 60,000 people, only the second game to be played at Wembley. I think England played Italy in the first game, and there we are there. And he goes in the dressing room, and I sit back and I think, what's he going to say? And he was calm. But then he did something I've never seen before. And he told it as it was to a player who he dug out. And he said, you wonder why you ain't got blah, blah, blah. He said, this can go one of 2 ways. You go out there, you get your asses whipped, we're embarrassed, 5-0. He said, or we roll our sleeves up, and you do that, and you do that. What happened? Inspirational talk. He goes out, 2-1, 2-2. There was some emotional things in there because we had Guppy playing, Steve Guppy, and I think there was some emotional things which I think Mark would have learnt from on talking to him about, do I play him, do I play him? And he had lots of good players, great players in there. And then, we go on to win 3-2, and I looked at him that day, and I come away, And I thought, what an inspirational talk to have a real manager with players who were on his side. And then, that was great for me. So Mark will always be up there. Rod was another one when we was looking for a job, and he come to me and he said, I've heard about you. People speak highly as a coach. We used to go and watch football, did the miles, and then we get the opportunity at Bishop Salford. We take over from a former England goalkeeper, who you all know, and they're struggling second from bottom. Rod goes in. What's the first thing he do? Looks at the players, looks at the buttons. You're not getting that. You're not getting that. Cut the budget. For him. No, seriously, he managed it.
Yeah.
Why are you doing that? And then he changed it round. He brought a couple of players in, hence why he changed the budget. You go and do your stuff. Trusted me enough, even on some Thursdays, I won't be there. So that was trust. And then obviously we go from there and we ended up 10th in the table. So we went from under a point a game, I think it's 0.91 points per game, to getting 1.76. And if we would have gone in at the start of the season and worked on that, we'd have been in the playoffs. So as a coach, you keep those things. So very inspirational. And there's others at lower levels that, I looked at, and I wouldn't name them, not because I want to be derogatory. And I looked at the difference between being an elite person, someone who's won something, someone that has a backbone, who's prepared to stand up for you and stand up to the players. And my experience around the non-league is a vague thing to say non-league, because there's professional people that are in non-league football, and Angelo's another one. And even though I took lots of people on their coaching badges, I've followed their progression. And his name's escaped me now, and I looked it up beforehand. Angelo, what he's achieved at Braintree has been really great. So someone that you've mentored, and then I look at others that I've mentored who are in the same level and not really football people. And then, like I said, the young lad now, and that's really disappointing. And I apologise to him. He's currently the manager at Sutton, Chris Agata. So Chris Agata was someone that I had on a B licence. We got on really well together, and he sort of said, I'd been in non-league at the time and he hadn't. He was working in the academy at Brighton. And I think it was a little bit of disappointment with what was going on, and he wanted to get away from academy football. And he said, what would you put your success down to? And I said, well, success. Well, if you mean success is taking a team from there to there, then I suppose it is a success. I said, it's about being organised. I said, a lot of coaches and managers will not go in there and actually coach you. It's all off the cuff. I said, if you can give your players an identity, and then you can organise them in possession and out of possession, and then transitional moments, I said, and you've got restarts, you can go a long way. So we kept in touch. I know that he went through a few clubs, and then he went to Stevenage in some capacity. Next thing I know, he's gone in, and I followed him. He was very complimentary when we played them, and they whacked us 5-0 when me and Stimo went down there on a Tuesday night, and we was like both ill, sitting in the car, and we thought we need to get off a good start. Minute and a half in the game, they score. We get battered, but he said Carl's really complimentary in the programmes here. I followed his career, and he went on to Worthing, done a very good job, and it was Angelo's lot. I think he went in after that. So I look at them and I think, they've gone on to do really well. So I look at what they've done, but then again, I think that I might have been influential in some way, shape or form to their development, and they're always very complimentary to myself. But again, coming back to mine, privileged to work with so many decent people, play with some half-decent players, and have a real good life in football. Not always as successful as I wanted it to be, but when I look back and then I tell, like coming in today and say I've worked with him and I worked for him and I've helped him develop, and he's gone his way, comes back to the very start of where I've said it wasn't my journey or destiny to go and be a player, but maybe you get people in life that help others to go on and achieve their dreams. And if I can do that, and I still believe I've got that enthusiasm and that knowledge and experience, then you can believe you can do that to players, coaches, and clubs, if given that opportunity.
Yeah. What would you say is your biggest high?
Biggest
The biggest achievement, biggest high.
Biggest achievement. You don't really look at it, but when you look back, and I've mentioned things today,
Something you're proud of, maybe. Something,
um,
or an achievement, or
well, I'll
something.
tell you one thing. I haven't mentioned it. Oh, I'm going to get this one in. I didn't achieve too much as a player, as I told you, but I can remember, and I say it tongue in cheek. I remember playing for Orient against Spurs as a youngster at the old training ground on the A10 where Tesco's is now. I was a young player. My parents used to follow me everywhere. I had a game, and you didn't have games every week. It was in the holidays, and there'd be an odd game midweek. I remember playing Spurs. And my little claim to fame is I scored in a game where Glenn Hoddle was watching me. He wouldn't know this. Carl was playing, God rest his soul. And I scored a 25-yarder. Or was it 30 yards? I think as I get older, it gets further. But I was outside the box. We got battered 5-1. And I can remember actually playing in the game and looking and thinking, that's Glenn Hoddle. What's he doing here? Because when we went in, it was a half term. I don't know what half term was. And seeing all the players, I'm thinking, great. But he'd stayed. Why had he stayed? Because I looked on the pitch and there was Cole. Cole Hoddle was obviously young, but he was playing up. He went on to play for Orient and whatever. But for me, that was something that I always remember, scoring a goal where my hero, one of my heroes, was on the side watching. But I think in terms of achievement, there's different sorts of achievement. I've helped coaches or supported them. I wouldn't say helped them. I've supported them to go on to have good careers and become international managers or take sides and be in charge of international teams. And that would be Anthony Hudson, one of them. And there was, I think Bo went on and won a little Lee Bowyer. So there's, because of the experience I've had in coach ed, players and frontline experience, so helping people go on to achieve their dreams of coaching at a high level, or even just being grassroots coaches, sitting with yourself and saying, yeah, you've given me some stuff to go on. That's a privilege and an honour to do that and help people go on. And it's appreciated. So it's not just about those at the top, it's those at the lower levels. And there's one I'm supporting at the moment. He was on our course and I'm trying to help him just get into a side because he's got a lot to give. And then I look at terms of players, to be able to work with players that have gone on and played for respective countries, Nigeria, about 5 or different, Scotland or wherever, lots of Turkey. Colin Richards, who just got a job this week. Let's hope he does well at, where's he gone into? Crawley, having worked with him. And seeing players go on that maybe you wouldn't, or even, whether they played for England, whether they played for their respective country, whether they've played in the Premier League or played in the EFL or grassroots or gone on and go, you won't remember me. I played for you at Leyton Orient. Who did you play? Oh, yeah, I remember you as the left back. And you will always remember the players. And there's one recently, he's on Facebook, and now he's a life coach. And I said, isn't it funny that I was coaching you as a player and now you're a coach?
Yeah.
And just being around to, so many things, the players, and going into the clubs and taking or helping, not taking them, because it's not me that played, taking Bishop Stortford from there to there, helping assist Jay Saunders, another one I took on, his coach who's done really well, helping to take Mason from there to there. Going in clubs where we haven't been there, but you're going, hands are tied. But just giving that opportunity. And the last one I mentioned, and I met him last week, and this is outside of football. So it's nice to be inspirational, and hopefully I've inspired people on their journey as I've been inspired by others. And I don't lose that enthusiasm to mention, but the one that really, really for me caps it all, and this is really strange that, you've invited me on to do this podcast. About 5 or 6 years ago, I'm sitting at home, and I think I'd just gone into Ipswich at the time. It wasn't long after that. I went in there initially as a scout and then went in the academy. I had some phone calls, and I had 5 or 6 different phone calls. I had messages, and they went to me, I didn't know you know Ben Davison. And I said this to Ben the other day because I went and met him. Who's Ben Davison? The boxing promoter, the one who's with Tyson Fury and Billy Joe Saunders, and currently, well, at the time he wasn't. He was with Tyson Fury and AJ later on. I said, don't remember him. He said, oh, have you not seen the podcast with James England? Is his name James?
James English.
English, James English. Apologise, James, if you're thinking of inviting me on. But James English, and I looked at it and I got sent it. And I'm sitting there and they're talking to Ben Davison. Ben Davison, how did your career start? And I'm looking at him thinking, don't vaguely remember him. Do I remember him? Do I, you know? And then he goes, you're renowned in the world of boxing. And this was 5-6 years ago when he started off. And he says, you do this and you do that. How did it start for you? And he said, well, as a footballer, played at Stevenage. He said, but I boxed as well. And I brought this up with Ben last week when I went in with him. And he said, I had a coach. And when I play it back, he gets my name wrong the first time. I think he says Colin Reid. He said, how did you get to be, why do people come to you and all that? He said, well, I had a coach and I played football. And he would stop it every couple of minutes. That's unlike me. But no, because I actually coach people. And he would say, why are you there? What are you thinking? Who are you going to play to? Well, if he does that, you're going to play there. He said, and it sort of resonated with him with having a methodology. And he was so complimentary in saying, well, if I go on to be a football coach or a boxing coach, then that's what I'm going to do. So for me, it's really great that you've helped, by his words, to help him with his methodology and to inspire him. And this is no bull. And he actually asked him, have you been in touch with him? Have you told him that your methods and your helping people become world champions are down to him? And he said, well, that's funny because I have been trying to chase him up. What did I do? Facebook, get on there, boom, 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 we need to meet. Oh, yeah. So I've not left it. And then I've had brief things where I've posts that he's done on Facebooks. And then obviously a couple of weeks ago, I just rang him out of the blue. I thought, I've got to go down to the gym and see him because he invited me down to the gym and he told me where it was in Arlo. I phoned him up. He didn't take my call back. I thought, okay, he said it, but that's good enough for me. He phoned me back. I was out in my garden. 45 minutes later, I'm still on the phone to him talking about, and he said, do you want to come into the gym Monday? So this was a couple of weeks ago. He said, and I got all the big hitters in. And I'm like, I don't know the boxing world. Of course I have an understanding. Of course I know, the AJs and that. And I have a little understanding. So last Monday, goes into the gym, Arlo. I thought I'd be there an hour, maybe 2 at the most. 6 hours I'm in the gym, working with, and who's he got in there? Moses, Toma, Moses, and then he's got, I've got to get his name right. Bloody hell, I spent loads of time with him and actually went in his debrief. Who fought at the weekend?
No,
come on.
I didn't see it. So
yeah. So at the weekend, the main man, WBO, and I do apologise because I will be going in there hopefully soon. But
it's our age, mate. It's all right.
yeah, it is age, but not being for boxing. But say, you go in there and meet these people and you see it. But to go in there and someone comes up to me, and I see he hadn't spoken to Ben, and this older guy was in there, and he just come over to me, and he said, "I've seen you in there. Who are you?" And I went, "Oh, my name's Colin Reid." Didn't know me from Adam. And he went, "Ben talks about you. He's mentioned you loads of times. He's the one." And it was really nice for someone that I know Ben hadn't said he's coming in because it was off the cuff, come up to me, and every single boxer in that gym, what I said to Ben afterwards, because he said, "What's the environment like football?" I said, every boxer, and I watched lots of sparring, I watch them on the bag, and I watch them do weights, and I spoke to them, and I was lucky enough to be in the presentation of, you got your fight at the weekend, this is what you need to work on. And someone who's got a big fight in May, be privileged enough to sit in there and go, "What did you do? Look at that." And I said to Ben, "Thank you for mentioning me when you do stuff." And I know I'm going off at a tangent, but I said, "It's really nice to be remembered." And he sort of said that in the boxing world, he's well liked or well known, but he was in fact saying he was hated for his methods. And I said, "What are your methods?" He said, "Exactly what you sit on. The detail of preparation of fighters." And he said, "There's a jealousy out there because world title fighters are going to him. Like Tyson Fury went to him, told me to story of how Tyson went to him through Billy Joe Saunders and, you know, their relationship. And then our AJ come to him and he said he's disliked. He went used stronger words than that by some coaches, and I won't name them. He said because he has a methodology, and his methodology is about detail. And along with his coach Lee, Lee Wood, I think his name is, to see him actually analyse fights. And I said, well, I would have thought everybody had done this. And he said, no, like you dissect the stuff that you do and you put the detail into it. He said, we do that in boxing. He said, hence why we've had the success. And I said, how do you choose your stable of boxers? He said, he's inundated with boxers that come to him, but he's now at that stage in his career where he can be a little bit more selective. And I said, what's your criteria for selecting? And it's so in line with football. And his answer was, I sit down with them and I talk to them and I find out about their personality and I find out what they're about. And I think that we put that in football, you know, and it's a lesson for me. When you go in there, you need to know your players and you need to know what they want. And you need to know, am I a good match with them? And that's what he does now. So for me, coming back to bring it back to what you said, the thought that someone from another sport who's a world leader, and I put him up there not just because I worked with him as a young player, and then we had experience and we spoke about Bishop Salford because he was in there when I went in and I didn't realise that. So for me to you talked about who's inspired you, there's so many different people, and Ben and those people that I allegedly inspired or helped are now ones that inspire me to go on. So I can learn from those that I supposedly helped in their progression in whatever they did. And again, like you said, if you go on a coaching badge and you have an open mind and you expose yourself to it, you can learn so much.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's lovely that it's all taking you into those sort of areas. So it's not, you know, it just shows you if you allow yourself to open up and learn, it can take you anywhere. Like you say, I bet you never thought you'd be stood in a boxing ring having a selfie done with probably one of the most famous names around at the minute.
Yeah, and do you know what? He's so humble. I've never been in a boxing ring. And then to climb up it, but to see boxing, and he obviously went in the corner, or he actually went in the corner, and when they were sparring, I didn't know the boxers. And then, that's Moses, that's so-and-so, that's so-and-so. So I was like, okay. Didn't know too much about them. But every single one of them knew when they walked past me, they was padded up, give me that, very respectful. Watch these fights, give me some feedback. And I watched sparring, and I was so enthralled by being in a different environment and taken aback by the discipline. And I know when you get footballs, they're all piss ball about and whatever. And there's time for joking, there's time for working. So maybe that was wrong. But to see them, and then I'm saying, because I'm thinking, all these guys, what are they doing in here? What do their jobs to do? So I said to Ben in between, I said, Ben, what do these guys do at jobs? He laughed. He said, these are all professional boxers. And they provided their sparring partners. So on that particular day, on the Monday, sparring partners. So you looked at people and you thought, doesn't look like a boxer. There was a couple in there, and I thought, the way they looked, the perception of what I perceived as being a boxer doesn't always mean perception's not everything. Their attitude. So I watched a couple of bouts and I looked and I thought, yeah, he's okay. He's good. You can see which one's a sparring partner and which one. And every one that went in Ben's corner was the one that he would go and Lee and him would give advice about. And then I remember the third boxer. And again, I apologise to him. Hopefully I'll see him again. And I did write the names down when I did some social media. This third boxer went in. He was so sharp. He was so lean. Bang, bang. He never got hit once. And I see him like he's fighting a guy that's like 2 stone heavier than him, blah, blah, blah. That may be why, but can box. Proper boxers. And this guy was sharp. He was in and out. Boom, 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 in and out. And I was like, oh my God. So when he come out the ring and when he finished, I went over to Ben and I said, Ben, I've seen 3 bouts now. That guy is different class. And he smiled and he laughed. And I said, We laughing. He goes, "Do you know who he is?" And I said, "No, but I'm not a boxer and I'm not trained in it. But that guy, there's levels and there's levels. And just like I said to you about football, you
Yeah.
get to that level and you realise." He went, "Let's get his name right, because if you go down there next time, he might give me a little jab." He was the silver medal holder, won at Olympic Games. He went different gravy. He said he's going pro. I think I think he's pro now, or he's either going pro or he's pro. I think he may be pro. And I then went back and he sat down right where I was sitting. And I said to him, I reached out to him, I said, "I tell you what, mate," I said, "I don't know boxing." And when I mentioned, he said, "Who are you?" He again acknowledged, it was almost like he knew because of Ben's, um, credit that he'd given me. And I said, I was so um, taken back by his professionalism. And I said to him, when I've seen you walk around the gym, I said, "You actually look like a boxer." And we shouldn't stereotype, but we do. Experience tells you that. And he said, "Why do I look like a boxer?" He had a very, very strong Geordie accent. And my dad's from the northeast. He doesn't speak like that now. Didn't follow football. And he said, "Why? Why?" I said, "You just look like a boxer. Everything that I think a boxer." I said, "But when you stepped in that ring," I said, your sharpness in terms of the neatness of his punches. Every punch, jab, jab, whatever he hit, landed. And he never got hit once. And I said to him, like, for me as an outsider, for someone who's in sport, I appreciate your crafthood and your boxing skills and ability. But like me, and I said to him, like, I'm honoured and privileged to sit with someone. And I said, like, "What's your future?" And it's funny because Ben and I had a conversation around where he sees himself going. And we talked about confidence and belief and believing. And I'm saying, where? And then Ben come over and it was like, "Where do you want to be? What do you want to be doing?" And he come out with this vision. And it was interesting because Ben and I had a talk and he said, he's now got a vision. He now knows where he's going. He's an outstanding talent. And it's just about the psychology side of believing where you can go and where you can take yourself.
Yeah.
And for me, this boxer and talking to various boxers in there, but understanding how humble they are and how dedicated they are. And it comes back to the footballing side of what do you need? These guys are making sacrifices of what they eat. And when they try and lose 20 pounds, stone and a half, to cut down to a fight. And I had a conversation with one of the other boxers, how much does it take out of you? And he said, well, that day after, that when you weighed the day before, and then you can go and scoff a big breakfast and you can put on £10 and blah, 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 blah. So for me, I thank Ben in a funny way, whereas he put down some credit to me, I'm now following him and thinking, he's a legend. And I'm now following the boxers now. So I've now got back into boxing. And like I said to Ben, I'm not going to leave it as long next time. I want to go and I actually want to see, not for any other reason. And I've never been to a bout. So hopefully at some stage that, I might get into that environment just to go and watch and see these guys' careers. Because like I say, I'm inspired by other people, particularly those that are making the sacrifices.
Oh, nice. Really interesting, mate. And like you say, nice to hear a different side, and it's taking you down a different avenue. So good luck. Hopefully, like you say, you never know. So it might come of that as well. You never know.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bit late for me to box or be a
Yeah.
boxing coach, but no, it's what it's done for me. Like you said, when you come, it opens your eyes. So now I'm looking for certain things when I'm watching the fights on the telly now, and I'll see it in a completely different way. And the tactical elements of it for me was fascinating.
Yeah. So what are you up to now? What's the here and now?
What am I up to now in terms of actually physically working?
Yep.
I had gone into Chelmsford a couple of times to again, someone else that, I supported. He needs supporting now with what he's gone, but listen, he don't need me. He's a big boy. I've been going into various clubs to watch what they're doing, and I don't like to impose myself, but I'm currently putting some stuff together. I've been touching with Poland again, as you know. I've delivered in different. I've gone to different clubs and different organisations around Europe, and I've been asked to go in on a few occasions to deliver what I deliver as a professional presenter, and they want a practical. They always want a presentation, a theoretical one of which I can deliver. But I always say, if I'm going to go out to a country or go out to a club, I need to demonstrate practically, because there's lots of people in the world now that are very good at talking about things, but they can't actually do it. So they talk the talk, they don't walk the walk. And I've always backed up by saying that. So I'm currently putting a presentation together to go out to Poland, where I've done lots of work in the past with the Polish Football Federation. So I'm doing a podcast, ironically, at the moment. And I think I mentioned it to you when you said about coming in here with a guy that's trying to get into that sort of thing. He's a young football coach out in Poland. I'm working with a couple of grassroots teams, doing some stuff. I'm working with some goalkeepers. And it's a good time of year to put yourself around for getting back into non-league. So, like I say, once you get your fingers burnt, you go in and you get relieved of your position. You have to keep on. So I'm now getting my CV together, and I think when you don't talk about it, you don't realise what you've done. And when you say I've been at every level as an assistant manager or coach, from step 1 to step 8, and that question gets asked, why haven't you been a manager? Don't know, give me a chance. And then you look at and you go, look at the current managers. Look who's the top of the Premier League. He's been a number 2. So I'm looking at it and going, we can't always be, we can't go in straight as a number 1. Some players are lucky enough to do that when they come out the game, when they've got a big name. But as you've seen, a lot of them don't always make a success. And I think it's really important, and I'm going to chuck it in now. Look at Michael Carrick. Michael Carrick, to me, epitomises what we've got in this country. Someone who I've personally met and worked with his brother. Michael probably wouldn't know me from Adam, but saying that, if you mentioned his brother, Graham, who played for me, very, very humble people. Why has he done well in Man United? I think what he's done is he's recognised that maybe he's not that manager that everyone's talking about they should have. But what he's done is recognised he knows Man United inside out.
Yeah,
He knows what the club how
reinstilled
it
their
operates.
values.
He's
Yeah,
got the values back. But he's got with him probably one of the best coaches, Stevie Holland.
yeah,
So Stevie Holland was very instrumental in England's success. And when he went off as a manager on his own, he didn't get success. And I note that, so some people can level that at me, maybe. But like you say, you need the opportunity. But what Michael's done at Man United, he has put someone around him who knows will do the job. He's the figurehead. He's the one representing the club. He's the one without the ego that he probably talks and says, I want to play this. Stevie Holland says, leave it to me, Gaffer. I'll do it. A bit like some of the relationships I've had with the people I've been around. Not at that level, admittedly. I've seen Stevie Holland work back in the day when, so I know about Stevie Holland and when he started off at Crewe and blah, 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 blah. So coming back, I think everybody has a role in football, and trying to bring it back to you may be a manager that doesn't know too much. And please don't think that I'm saying that about Michael. I'm looking at Michael saying he knows what his strengths are and he knows what his weaknesses are. And he also appreciates the others and what their strengths are. So for me, people saying, oh, don't give him the job. He's not a top manager. He's not a this. He's not a that. Well, at the moment, he's what they need. And I think that I hope Michael does well, as Jermaine does and Colin Carzine Richards all in the last couple of weeks. Colin's gone into Crawley, as you know, had a good win at the weekend. And so as hopefully Jay will go into Woking and may even get a result down at Braintree on Monday. I might even go to that game. But for me, I think it's recognising what your strengths are and being able to trust the others that you're working with. So, yeah, bringing it back, I'm preparing stuff for Poland. I continually go and visit people at whatever level to go, what can I nick off of them? What can I pinch? And even watching Angelo, I watched so many things, the way he deals with players and the way he does things, and he would come back at me and ask that. So for me, I think there's things that all coaches or managers need when they have people around. You need people, number 1, you can trust. And number 2, people that can do the job. And number 3, that got your back. And I think tying that in with, and that's the advice I give to anyone, get the right people in so that the owners get the right people in. As a manager, get the right coach in that's got your back and that's not going to do that. And that's the big advice and the things and lessons that I've learnt from football, for sure.
Yeah. Mate, it's been fascinating listening to you. Sad part is we've only just scratched the surface, and I know that. So as long as you're happy, we'll 100% get you back on, I think. Certainly be interesting to hear more about the Polish side and all the different travels you've been on.
Yeah.
But I've got to say, from a football fan, football lover, it's been fascinating to sort of hear your adventures and your views on everything. So hopefully you've enjoyed it.
Do you know what, Andy? I've actually loved it. You know, like you say, you know, I can talk for England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland. But to be able to articulate and share some of my experiences, and hopefully help and continue to inspire other people to go on, whether it be playing and reaching their highest level, is great for me. But thank you again. And like I said, as you know, I've been at a lot of clubs, and there's lots of other stories I'd love to tell, or not just tell, share my knowledge and experiences of working in different countries, going into different clubs in Europe. And you know, if people find it interesting, fantastic. If they don't, then I certainly have
Yeah,
anyway.
no,
But as long as you
likewise.
have, but
Like I say, mate, I only do this for me, and if anyone listens to it, which they seem to be enjoying, then happy days. If they don't, as I say, fuck them.
exactly.
Well, I can sell this, you can't. But no, in 100%, like I say, I would love to have you back and be more. Like I say, I think it works well this way. It's a little introduction of those that might not know you. Then I've done it before in the past where someone's come on and then they've come back with, like I say, more sort of stories, and we can jump
Yeah,
straight into the nitty
yeah,
gritty, the dirty.
yeah,
But this
yeah.
gives, I think, everyone an understanding of who you are, what you're about. Where, as we know, these things can get mixed messaged.
As you
People,
know, with me, I'm a
yeah,
horrible person. I'm a bully. I'm
people,
nasty. You know, it makes you
people,
laugh.
people can. I think you're certainly a character that unless you give the time of day to actually sit and talk to, you could easily get the wrong perception. And I think that's the problem with people. No one's got the actual time to sit
Yeah.
down and find out. Which I'm glad that I found out all sides. So, like I say, thanks for coming in, mate. I've enjoyed every second of it, and definitely can't wait to have you back in.
Thanks very much.